In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about method overloading. We're going to understand that a class can contain multiple methods with the same name. We're going to talk about the importance of the method signature, and we're going to understand how polymorphism allows Java to determine the correct version of a method to call based on context in our program. So first, whenever a class contains more than one method and they all of the different methods have the same identifier, we say that that method's overloaded. It's just a fancy name that means this particular class contains multiple methods that have the same name associated with them. When a method's overloaded, there's some rules that we have to follow. Each individual version of the method has to have a unique signature. So you might wonder, what does that mean, the signature of the method? Signature is the top line of the method when we write the method implementation. It's the part that establishes the method's return type, the method name, the number of parameters, and the type of each parameter. So again, that's all that data that goes in the top line of a method. And when the program looks at the uniqueness of the signature, we said the method signature has to be unique whenever we have an overloaded method. The computer's only looking at whether it has a different number or type of parameters. It doesn't distinguish it based on the return type. So if two different methods were in a program and they had the same parameter list, and the only difference was the return type, it would give you a syntax error. It wouldn't allow you to compile that. They have to have different parameter lists in order for the signatures to be unique. So we talked about the array list and how it has those two different add methods in it. And we know we can use either version of the add method in our programs. We're not restricted to just one or the other. They both exist. They're both out there. We could call either one. And the format of the method call would be different for these two methods because they have different signatures. This first method has a signature that requires one parameter, one argument to be matched up with that, and it returns a Boolean value. So we'd have to write it in a context where we saved or used that return value from the method. On the other hand, the second method, the version down here, it requires two parameters, so two arguments when we call it, and it doesn't have any return type. So those are going to look really different when we call them in the program. The Java compiler will be able to uniquely figure out which method is going to be called reliably, just based on the number and data type of the arguments that get passed into the method call. So let's look at an example program. I wrote you a little example program down here. So we have a program where we declare an array list, my list, just a list of 10 values. Say we create a new integer value, storing the number 3. And then suppose we call mylist.add. Which version is getting called? So if you look up at the method signatures again, the version that we just called, it was passing in one argument. So it's going to call the version that requires one parameter. Remember that Java matches up the parameters and the arguments. That's how it decides what to call. So this first call to the add method, that's going to call the top version in our listing. If we made a second integer down here and stored the value 4 in it, and then called the add method using two arguments here, we have an index as integer, and then also the value that we want to add, that's going to call the second version of the method. And again, it's going to know to do that because you passed in two arguments. And so it will look for the version of the method that requires two arguments and make sure that the argument data types that you're passing in match the expected ones.